right. So, welcome everyone to the NLP and the Law of Attraction, if you will. How to use NLP to help you manifest your dreams, if you will, or what's going on. What's kind of interesting, one of the things, because when I started posting on that, two things happened. One is I got a lot more feedback on those posts than all the other posts that I've done lately, right? And I always tell people when I'm doing practice building, which I'm kind of getting back into that after several years, is always go for the low-hanging fruit, right? I mean, then you can build out from there, but, it's, when I had the biggest practice I had, which had 3 offices here in Florida, and it was kind of the same practice I had in the Chicagoland area where I had 2, 70% of my clients were weight loss, right? And about 10 or 15% were my addiction stuff. Smokers, when I first started, smokers, that was in the late 80s, so there were more smokers. But anyway, it was just it's the low-hanging fruit. But the law of attraction is kind of cool, as a lot of us like it. Some of us tolerate it. It's just kind of interesting. But if you've ever experienced some of the stuff with the law of attraction, it's kind of interesting. And when you look at your own life, have you had experiences where you had a goal, a dream, a desire, and you were able to accomplish that, especially if you were able to accomplish it outside of what we would consider normal realms of ways to do it? Not like step 1, step 2, step 3, then you got the goal. Because some of these, it's like you got it, you start, certain things happen, and the next thing you know, it's there, right? The next thing you know, it's like, wow, how did that happen, right? And again, the interesting thing about the law of attraction, just like a lot of things, the people that are very good at it probably can't tell you how they do it, right? Because if you're really good at something and it becomes subconscious, and you're in that unconscious competence, you can't teach the steps. It's teaching it and doing it's a 2 different skill set, right? As Michael Jordan said, right? And everybody would say he's a pretty good basketball player. He couldn't coach or teach it, right? He was too busy doing it. And and some people can do both. Some people can be good at something and then teach it. But again, it's 2 different skill sets. And I use the sports analogy. When you look at a lot of the really elite coaches, especially in the only sport I follow much anymore outside of mixed martial arts, thanks to our buddy Jeff Neal. Outside of that, where guys and girls get in the ring and beat themselves half to death. Outside of that, the only sport I follow is football. And it's most of the great football coaches, by their own admission, were mediocre players, right? Or they weren't good enough to get to the NFL. Jimmy Johnson once said if he was good enough to really play at the NFL level, he probably wouldn't have became a coach. Right? And it kind of makes sense. He's like, so he became a, Hall of Fame level coach. So anyway, so NLP, so what are some of the, and then neuro-linguistic programming, which is the way it applies to law of attraction, in my opinion, is the thing we call in NLP chunking, looking at what works, and then can you break out the steps to get there? And again, usually the person doing it, it's hard for them to just begin to teach it unless someone like walks them through the steps, if you will. If that makes any sense, because it's those little things. So we all have those different kind of things, I guess I've been into this kind of thinking for my entire life, right? It goes all the way back to when I was getting out of high school and I had a couple of options, right? One of the options was not good. So I ended up in the United States Army. And how I got in the Army was kind of interesting. That's a story for another day. But anyway, I'm getting out of the Army after and I went in to do a certain thing. I wanted to be a pilot, helicopter pilot, and it was at the end of the Vietnam War. It was just winding down. And so they were cranking out helicopter pilots in the Army, right? And I was in, and I'd gone through basic, and I was getting ready to go to flight school in beautiful Dothan, Alabama. And they decided to wind down from the war. So I spent a couple of years in the Army bouncing around doing different things because there was no slots for flight. But in one way, it worked out better because I still think if I became a helicopter pilot, I would have probably did my 20, or like Billy, 25 as a warrant officer and got out, right? And I don't know, who knows, they say, I remember there's a really cool, some research done I'll talk about, that all of us have 3 to 7 lives we could live where we would have been perfectly happy. Right? And it was kind of like this idea that you have one passion in life that you have to find, whatever that one passion is. The guy he's a psychologist from Stanford, a research psychologist from Stanford, and he says, that's only like a small subset of the population. The people that know as a little kid, they want to be whatever it is, a doctor or a lawyer, an actor or whatever. And a true passion for it, not just, as kids, we wish I want to be an astronaut or whatever it is, right? But most of us, as we're growing up, we have 3 to 7 things that we'd be perfectly happy with, right? It's a cool talk. I'll give that talk later. I'll point you to it. It's like fascinating, right? So anyway, I'm getting out of the Army, and this is probably my first real experience with law of attraction. And I decided I wanted to be an actor. Going to be an actor. I'd never seen a play in high school. I wasn't in the theater group, right? It's just, I was the beer drinking guy who run around playing football, right? And wrestling and doing that kind of stuff, Army ROTC. I was on that side. I admired actors and I always liked it, but there was a cognitive dissonance between the two things, becoming an actor and the other things in my life. And so, but I'm getting out of the Army and I go, I want to be an actor, right? Now I had no idea what it was, what the skill set was, what it had to be, and all that. And so, and for some reason, I decided I want to do theater acting, even though, like I said, I don't think I'd ever really seen a play. And so I get out of the Army and I started taking classes at the local community college because I knew I could do it. I don't know how. It's like, I think I could do this. Didn't know how, didn't know what the skill set was. So I get in this, intro to theater at Indiana University. And it was fun. And it was interesting to me, but something inside kind of says, ask the teacher, the professor there, if you were really serious and wanted to be an actor, how do you do this? Because, if you're trying to manifest something, you get inklings in your life about ask people certain questions. And he was a very nice guy, and I knew him for the next 30 years. And he goes, well, we really don't teach that here, to be honest with you. We teach theater, and basically the people that take our theater go end up becoming theater teachers, right? They go and we gear you up to become a theater instructor. I'm like, I don't want to be a goddamn theater teacher. I want to act. He goes, well, it's, then you probably need, and I remember him saying this, you probably need to go to a professional school. I'm like, well, what the hell's a professional school? And if you ask the question, they'll tell you generally. He goes, well, there's several. There's the Juilliard School of Drama. There's the Goodman Theater in Chicago. And probably the best is the place called the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to go there. And I remember he did what Billy was just doing. He laughed at me and he goes, they get about 20,000 applications, even back then, this was in the 70s, you get about 20,000 applications a year for about 120 slots. And I'm like, well, it doesn't hurt to try, right? So anyway, I called this place, didn't even know what they were. This was long before the internet, so I had to look it up and got the number, called them up, started talking, saying I wanted to go there. And they're like, oh, you just missed, I still remember this, you just missed the national auditions, that they have in New York. And then they have regional ones, in several cities. And I said where I was. They said, oh, we just had them in Chicago and we're done now. You're going to have to wait a year. I said, damn, what a bummer. And they go, well, why didn't you apply? I said, well, to be honest with you, I didn't know you existed. Right. And that I remember them saying, really? And you want to be an actor? I go, no, I heard you're the best. And I figured I'd try, but I just got out of the Army. It kind of stretched the truth a little bit, right? And so they're like, oh, so you're a veteran, right? I said, yeah, I just got out of the Army. So they presumed I just, I'd been in Vietnam, came back, finished out, was getting out of the Army. And so they set up a private audition, right? And so I go, great, let's do this. And so they told me, they gave me the date. It was on the north side of Chicago. And now I had no idea what an audition was. Right. So I had to go back and ask that theater instructor, what's an audition? He told me, I didn't know what I was doing. I've never done it before a day in my life. So I got my little thing and I'm trying to do it. And I go up to meet this lady who was going to give me my private audition. And I get to her house on the north side of Chicago. And it was the only way I could describe it. A butler answered the door. Right. And I was led into basically what was like a private little theater. And this is back before that was a lot of people had them, right? And so I met the lady. She was an alumni of the American Academy of Fine Arts, had won I think one Tony Award, been on Broadway a lot, been in a lot of movies, and then got married. Obviously married well, living on the north side of Chicago in a mansion overlooking the lake. And so we start talking and she goes, okay, do your audition. So I get up and I start to do it. And about 2 sentences in, I stopped. I said, I can't do this. I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I have no clue. And I remember thinking right before I did it, and this is like 40 years ago, that something told me, and this is the law of attraction to me, to just tell her the truth. So I sat down on the chair across from her and I went, I don't know what I'm doing. I want to be an actor. I figure I'm going to have to go somewhere to learn how to act. And so I don't know how to audition. I don't know any of this stuff. I don't know the jargon. And she looks at me and she goes, well, why did you apply to one of the hardest schools in the world to get into? And I figured, well, it's like when I volunteered for Ranger School. I figure if you shoot for up here and you don't make it, at least you try. At least you try. Right? Rather than, wondering if you could do it. And I said, and I don't have any bad habits yet because I haven't done a lot of theater. And I read on there, when they sent me all their info, they said part of the first year is unteaching bad habits young actors get in high school, college, and local theater. Right? And I said, I read that, so I don't really have any bad habits. As I say now as a psychologist, I was tabula rasa. It was kind of a blank slate. And so she looked at me and we talked for a minute. It was one of those, I didn't think anything would happen. I got a phone call that night and they offered me a slot, right, with a partial scholarship as a veteran. That's the only reason I got the scholarship. It wasn't based on talent. And so anyway, so I get there and, there's all these like celebrities, kids there. There's people that had been in movies and that, and we're coming back for professional training. So that was kind of my first experience with it, right? It's like I visualized it, even though I didn't quite know what I was visualizing. I could, I knew I had to learn a skill set, right? And so, that's what we have to do when it comes, and I didn't know NLP then, and the thing that stopped me from probably staying in that profession forever was the same thing that kind of screwed up my military career, which was I had an active addiction that I had to get rid of in a couple of years down the road, right? But anyway, that's just like how this stuff works. Then a few years later, started hearing about the law of attraction. This was a long time ago. Napoleon Hill and Wallace Wattles, all these books about, visualize your future and things like that. So that's, and it fascinated me and it seemed to work. And then once I got into recovery and got the addiction out of the way, that's what led me into the NLP world, where then it began to make sense where I could look at like, what are some of these things going on that that can help you manifest your dreams, or use the law of attraction to do the things that you want, right? And so that's kind of, and I've been doing it, with like a lot of people, pretty good results. If you look at my life, I think pretty good results, but it's just a fascinating journey. And I will admit, ladies and gentlemen, I dropped the ball. I should have been doing, I keep thinking I was going to teach this, and I never quite did, right? Again, I taught it back in the late 90s and early 2000s. It'd be the National Guild. We do these things on Sunday nights. This is one of the topics I talk about. And so, but I let down because it worked in my life. I just never really taught it. And one of the reasons I made the tactical error of thinking everyone knows what I know, because it's been around such a long time. I think everyone knows what I know, and maybe they do, but I can only teach what works for me, right? I can only teach what works for me. And I can tell you the other time where the law of attraction changed my life. The first was getting into the Army and doing some things like that, and getting into the acting career. I was in recovery. I was just starting to really get sober. And what can stop me from manifesting a dream is the feeling of not being worthy. I don't know if anybody else has that. I'm not good enough, right? I'm not worthy. And we could joke about it, but it's true, right? And sometimes parents, authority figures, teachers, well-meaning, install perfectionism in people, and perfectionism will destroy creativity, action, and success, right? Because you'll never pull the trigger. I was talking to somebody today, and I said there was this example of, there was a guy who was working on a screenplay, and he had people interested. They really wanted to hear the pitch. He kind of gave them the overview. They said, well, write up, the screenplay. And so he was working on it, but he wanted to get it perfect, right? So he kept tweaking it, right? And then finally thought it was well enough to pitch. They kept saying, like, let us hear it. Okay, yeah, we'll get there. Anyway, and then what happened when he got in to do the pitch, they're like, oh, we're already doing a movie just like that. And not that anybody stole his idea. The universe gives the idea to a lot of people, right? And someone else actually sketched it out, pitched it, got the gig, wrote the screenplay, and now it's in pre-production, right? That's why you'll see a lot of movies come out, and then there'll be several movies just like it, books, things like that, right? And it's not plagiarism, I don't think. It's just, it's just the ideas hit, and the universe wants these ideas out there. The universe wants this to be manifested. The universe wants this, right? And so I was young in recovery, and and I'd had some challenges in recovery at the first couple of years. And I remember I was telling my wife this. I said, I'm getting ready to teach this. I said, right across the street from my house, they're putting a new roof on the house. People are still digging out from the hurricane down. And so there's all the guys up on the roof working. And, it's Florida, it's hot. So my empathy's out there, and they're up there putting on the roof. And I told her, I had a flashback when I was pulling out of my driveway and I'm seeing the roofers. I said, I was sober a little while, and I got a sales job that paid quite well, and I liked it. And I was driving around, it was the north side of Chicago, and I was calling on businesses. And anyway, I go by this like factory area, small factory, and these guys are out on their break, taking a break. And I remember seeing them all over there. And I remember thinking to myself, right, that like, who do I think I am? I'm sitting there in this nice new car. I'm dressed nice. I'm making great money, basically selling computer maintenance programs. And I should be over there, working in a factory. And I don't know where the thought come from, but I knew at that moment that if I continued that train of thought, it wouldn't be long before I'd probably be back in detox and starting all over again. Right. And so, the universe gave me that idea that, I had to feel worthy of what was going on. Right. And so what is this law of attraction and how does it work? Well, I think the underlying issue when people ask, because someone asked me when I did one of the posts the other day that Bruce saw and he said it was kind of good. They're like, well, then what stops you if you have a vision of the law of attraction? You're trying to manifest something. And I think one of the first things is do you feel worthy, right? Or deserving of it, right? Okay. When you look at like successful people, the ones that we see people all the time get the success, they build the business, they win the lotto, they get in the major motion picture, and then they destroy their career. They blow all the money from the lotto, right? I mean, these stories are common. So do you have that feeling of being worthy, deserving, right? And then the other big issue I see, I think, at least from my viewpoint, is one of the magic ingredients of making one of these your dreams or desires come true isn't like necessarily what your dream is, but how do you think about it, right? So bear with me on this. If you've ever had a friend or a family member with an addiction problem, alcohol or drugs, in some ways, active addicts and alcoholics are masters of the law of attraction. Absolute masters. Because you could take someone that has an alcohol or drug problem, and we see it all the time. Young man, young woman, they're in the throes of an addiction, and family members go, we're going to send them down to grandma's or Aunt Betty's or Cousin Joe's out in the middle of bumfuck Iowa, or not to insult Iowa, but wherever it happens to be, right? Because they won't know anybody. So it'll be safe, and little Johnny or Jill, 2 hours after hitting town is high or drunk. Right? How the hell did they do that? They manifested it, right? That you and I, couldn't do, right? Necessarily. But it wasn't what their dream, if you will, was, let's say, to get high, right? Or to get drunk. They don't know anybody. But if you pull back and you think about it, it's how they're thinking about it. They feel it in every cell of their body. They want that drink. They're going to get that drink no matter what, or whatever the drug is. Right? And it's like they'll figure out a way. They'll figure out a way, right? And so that's what they're doing. They're making it, they're vivifying it. It's a vivid, they're not just picturing the goal. They're making it visceral. That's the word I couldn't think of. Visceral. Every cell of their body wants that drink, that drug, right? And when you look at some of your goals or desires that you say you wanted, that you want to try to manifest, do you feel it viscerally? Or is it a wish? This is, I don't think law of attraction works on wishes, right? It might, but it's like, do you want this more than anything? And they constantly think about it. They don't just gradually think, oh, it'd be nice to have a beer. Like, God damn it, I need a beer. I have to have a beer. It's what I want more than anything. Right? Or score dope, whatever their addiction is, right? They'll find it. Right? Because again, your eyes can only see and your ears can only hear what your brain says is important. Right? It's not looking for a wish. It's looking for what you put in as you need to survive. If you ever dealt with an addict or an alcoholic, when they're in that mode, it's survival. It's not, I'd like to have a drink. It's, I have to. I'll die if I don't. Right? So can you lock in whatever your desires are, right, at that level? Do you want it that bad? Right? Do you want it that bad? Right? I remember I was watching an interview. I think it was with our dear friend David Goggins, a very soft-spoken guy, if you've ever heard him speak, right? Anybody know who David Goggins is? Very professional language, very soft-spoken. I tell everybody, you think my language is bad, go listen to him talk. But they were asking him once, because he's one of the few guys that went through, what is it, Air Force Spec Ops, Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, right? I think he's the only one that ever do all three. A couple guys have done Rangers and SEALs. And I forget the interview, I wish I could find it. And they said, how do you do, the washout rate in that thing is astronomical, 120 guys enter, SEAL, whatever that boat group, whatever it is, Billy could tell us later, but they show up at Coronado to start, maybe 20 to 25 make it. And these guys are in shape. It's not usually, I mean, you don't get there or when I showed up for RIP, you already you had to be physically able to complete the training or they wouldn't allow you to start the training. And so they're asking him, like, what's, now that you've done it, and you went back as a SEAL, he got to go back and, be a SEAL instructor at Coronado. He goes, well, the only thing I'll paraphrase it in my words. I don't remember what he said. It's much more F-bombish, but he goes, it's the people, those men that are there that have the mindset that the only way they're leaving is in a body bag. And they don't listen when they say, ring the bell, put your helmet on the ground, you're done. You can hot meal, a shower. If you've ever been through one of those where you haven't slept for 3 or 4 days, that sounds, interesting, right? And so it's that, it's a visceral thing. You have to make it in your core, right? So do you have that, right? And again, when you look, very few of us ever have those dreams and desires to that level, right? And so, you need to learn from, people with an addiction, right? People that have accomplished some interesting things, and it's all that, it becomes, that you have to, it's not that you want to, it's almost like you have to. And that's what you have to begin to break down and install in your life. Right? So you have to, first of all, feel deserving, worthy. There's a lot of, some of us need work on that, especially if it's a dream or a desire that wasn't nurtured from childhood. How many people have dreams and desire nurtured from childhood? Okay. You want to be an actor, a writer? Yeah, right. Get a real job. Do that shit on the side. I think it was an actress, Jennifer Lawrence. They were talking to her because, she quit everything at 16 and went out to be an actress. And I don't think many parents would be encouraging of that, right? Right? First, go to high school, then maybe college, then you could go do it. Well, by 18, she'd start in the Hunger Games, right? And she wouldn't have got cast at 24, right? So anyway, so do you have that? Many of us weren't nurtured or encouraged to go after these dreams, right? And sometimes it's just the little subtle things, Can't you be happy with what you got? Especially if you got a pretty good life, Right? When you look at the super successful people that seem to manifest a lot of magical things, it would have been easy for somebody to tell Elon Musk, you created PayPal, and forget the other thing he created. Isn't that enough? So then he does Tesla, SpaceX, that drilling company, Twitter, whatever it is. It's like, in one of his interviews, he says he was lucky that his parents encouraged him to go after his dreams. Right? And he also has a little bit of OCD, so when he gets a dream, he locks in. Right? So anyway, so do you feel worthy? Right? And can you make it visceral? Whatever your dream or desire is, do you want it so bad you need it to survive? Right? And then, and then you have to do it regularly. There's a religious text that talks about tithing. Right? Tithing. And it's interesting. The person I like when I was hearing him talk about tithing was not Wallace Waddles. His name just fell out of my head. It'll come to me. But he says, of course, when we hear the word tithing, it's used by churches, right? Basically gets you to send them 10% of your income for money, right? To support whatever it is. And what he says is that no, it's about spending at least 10% of your time thinking about your dreams and desires. The most important the most important valuable thing you have is your time. You're never getting that back. You can make more money. You could, you could do other things, but it's your time, right? In theory, if we woke up, we all get the same few hours in a day to live. Future's not guaranteed. How are you going to spend your time? How are you going to tithe part of your time, right? And can you spend a little bit of your time thinking about your dreams and desires? Not just once and then, maybe it happens, but much like the addict, it becomes consuming. Right? And if you've ever had an addiction, you know the feeling of you're constantly thinking. You may be doing other things like you're making a living right now, but you're thinking at 5 o'clock, I'm at the watering hole. So it's not that. So can you spend 10% of your time thinking about your desires? And then make it visceral. See it, hear it, feel it, smell it, taste it. Now, what's the taste of success? What's the taste of your goal? What does it smell like? What does it feel like? What does it feel like? Because I can tell you, going back to the first story to close the loop, ladies and gentlemen, for my NLP trainers, go back to the loop. When I was thinking about being an actor and I didn't know what it was, but I said, I know there's got to be that feeling where you're out on stage and the spotlight or the lights are on you. I'd never experienced it, but I could imagine it because I'd seen it, right? You see it in movies and television. I'm like, wow, what would that be like? And I could picture it. I could feel it. The warmth. If you've ever been on stage, like in a play, you could feel the lights, right? And the silence around you is what's going on, right? So anyway, can you feel worthy? Can you want it more than anything? Can you spend, quite a bit of your time thinking about it, not just once and as vividly as possible, right? And then you have to follow your intuition when it comes up, right? That's maybe the hardest part. Like, asking, Neville Goddard. That's who I was thinking of. Neville Goddard. Sorry, brain fart. Took a minute. Right? But that's the guy with the tithing. So can you do that? And then you get that inclination like to go. You always hear about these people with the law of attraction. They want to get in a great relationship. They don't know how, but they can picture it. They knew what they wanted. They do these things. They wanted it so bad. They were constantly thinking about it. They made it visceral. And then one day they were driving and something, a friend of mine says at the last minute, he goes, I'm going to stop at Starbucks, get a cup of coffee. He goes, why the hell did I think about going to Starbucks, getting a cup of coffee? I rarely go to Starbucks. But he went in, and as he's getting his cup of coffee, he starts chatting up with the person there, an attractive young lady, not to gender code, but he was, straight man looking for a straight relationship, as rare as that might be in current America. Sorry, I digress. They start chatting it up, and he, with no preconceived notion, he wasn't hitting up on her. He said at first he's just standing there getting a cup of coffee, and Starbucks can take a little while. And the next thing you know, they sat down, they talked. Fast forward 20 years later, why did he? And he goes, to this day, I don't know why I went to that Starbucks. Right? Why you answer the ad you answered if you're looking for the job. So, and then it's to follow that intuition. Right? And then to bring in our NLP even more, some of this is NLP, is to model people that have done what you wanted. Right? So if you have this, whatever it is that you want to do, you start thinking about it, and you start, the people that are doing it, what are they doing? Oh, and you go and do that. Right? And, people laugh. Sounds like an ad because it comes from an ad. People laughed when I said I was going to play the piano or learn the piano, whatever. But this one, people laughed in my little theater group. So I said, you know what? Fuck this shit. I'm going to start doing movies. Right? And they're like, yeah, right. You're living middle of Florida. There's not a lot of movie opportunities, right? So when I said there's got to be a way. And then certain things began to happen. Okay? And this was one I visualized. Right? If you're going to get it, I'll tell you afterwards, but let me make sure everybody can see it. Can you see that on your screen? Yes? Is it the picture of a skull?
Yes.
Okay. Let me see. If it starts, I'm doing multiple displays here, so it's new to me. So here we go. See the Scream team? Can you hear it?
Yes.
Totally rad and bitchin' 80s slasher murder mystery weekend.
1980 style dress only. Be there or be Squaresville. Address, blah, blah, blah.
What do you think?
I think you've lost your damn mind.
Let's get going already before I lose my buzz.
Yeah, God forbid you drive sober.
What are these?
These aren't exactly kids being abducted either. That was so gross. It's like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre in there.
Well, it's like Children of the Corn out here. Nice place, huh?
Well, I'm afraid this town doesn't offer much in terms of entertainment.
Oh, that's all right. We've got a whole weekend planned. It's gonna be great.
Hey, yo, that's my car. Can I help you, sir?
Come get us, you hunk of a man, you.
You know this is private property, buddy.
All right. That was from Cruel Summer, a movie I did in 2020, right at the height of COVID, by the way. And
Wow.
we had to
Can
do
we
it.
watch it?
Like, well,
Can we buy it? Can we rent it somewhere?
yeah, I'll send you the link.
Okay.
But anyway, so when I decided to do it, again, some of my intuition said, well, if you're going to do what these people do, you need to take next level classes, right? When you look at people that succeed, they always want to train with people better than them, right? Right. And it's like, so I started finding some professional classes, took professional classes, which and it's kind of interesting because that movie was interesting to me because I don't watch those movies. That is not my genre, slasher flicks, right? Now I've been in like 8 of them, right? And it's just kind of, those things can happen. So anyway, you have to want it. You know, when you look at this, you know, you have to really want this stuff viscerally. You have to do it consistently. You have to feel worthy of it. And then if you can find people that have done it, figure out how did they do what they're doing, right? And so I hope that makes sense to everyone. So yeah, so, you know, I think it can be done. I think it's just a matter of doing it, as was said, consistently, and doing the things that you need to do regularly. And so have some fun with it. So I'd like to introduce the groundbreaking NLP and Law of Attraction Mastery Program, where you can unlock these hidden powers of your mind and manifest those thoughts, dreams, and desires that you desire. It's a transformative kind of program based on how things actually work using NLP, and then combining that with some of the things we know about the law of attraction to create a dynamic synergy so you can speed up the manifesting. You know, because we all know that with NLP, we learn how to program our thoughts, actions, and desires. Or as I always say, program yourself for success, and free yourself from the limitations that's holding you back. And, you know, we've heard for years that the law of attraction is all about, you know, like attracts like, but it's deeper than that. You have to reframe those negative beliefs, supercharge some things to amplify the effects. So if you enroll in the NLP and the Law of Attraction Mastery Program, which is July 22nd, Saturday, July 22nd, 12 noon to about 2:30, you'll begin to get some comprehensive models. We'll exercise things together to accelerate this transformational process, you know, and at the limited time offer, you're also going to get a free download of a rarely seen Wallace Waddle book called, you know, it's about your wants. He's the kind of like the grandfather of all this stuff. So I would stress, don't wait or delay releasing your potential. So, you know, the program's live at hortonpsychology.com. Just click on it, join us, and get your free download so you can start doing the things that you want. And join us for our NLP and Law of Attraction Mastery Program, where you unlock your potential. That's Saturday, July 22nd, and you can begin to take those steps forward so you can manifest your desires. So I hope to see you as I would say, trudge the road to happy destiny. If you have any thoughts, just let me know, and I'll see you all soon.